Hey folks, welcome back. You're still with us here on the C Morning Show. It is 7:15 in the a.m. and time for our first morning discussion, and it's about wellness. Now, most of us know that too much stress can actually lead to physical illness. And when the body does not have time to reestablish balance, it's overworked, and your immune system is weakened, it may make us susceptible to actual illnesses, as well as many crucial bodily processes may also be disrupted. And it's even said that some people who are sick and they think about their illness, they may even get sicker. You don't know, do you believe this, Jasmine? Does this happen to you?
I don't think
No, it
so.
doesn't
I mean,
happen to
I think
me.
it would be a bit, I would know, I feel like, if I had something.
Right.
I would, thankfully my grandma's a doctor, so I'd immediately call her and say, hello,
Describe your
it's me
symptoms.
again.
Yeah.
So she knows already
Okay.
like the baseline stuff that I have, which is possibly stomach issues and all
Right.
that. But it's so weird to know that people get anxious about their health even more. But that's the fact. And in this case, some people get a variety of symptoms such as chest pain, back pain, fatigue, or uneasiness in certain parts of their body. However, after being examined by a doctor, no diseases are found.
Okay.
Have you, Somatoform?
No, but I have heard of this as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. We discussed this earlier.
Yeah.
the
Munchausen by proxy?
No, the giraffe on Madagascar. I'm giving
That's how
you a
you know you
simpler
have
example.
kids.
I'm giving you a simpler example. Yeah, when he's actually thinking he's sick all the time.
Right.
And then, is he actually sick, or is this just like a
And then
a
Gloria's
mental
like,
thing he
you're
has?
not
That's right.
sick, you're fine. Now, if you have this problem, it's called somatoform disorder. Now, can it be cured? Let's ask Mutiara Maharani, a clinical psychologist at Personal Growth. Thanks for joining us, Mutiara.
morning.
Hi, Jasmine.
Welcome
Hi,
back.
Paul.
Good to have
Thank
you,
you.
always.
Now, I have an interesting question that I asked you behind the scenes. What is the difference between somatoform and Munchausen by proxy?
Okay, so Munchausen is actually, it's a syndrome that's quite similar
Yeah.
to this somatoform. It's basically when you feel certain physical symptoms, but when you go to the doctor says
nothing.
there's nothing there,
Right.
But it can be a little bit more complicated because you have to see the intention behind that. For some people, they have like negative intentions, like they might be benefiting from certain medical diagnosis.
For example, like, oh, I don't have to go to work today.
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that, right?
But for
I think all uni students are somewhat have used that sort of
calling sick,
reasoning.
right?
Probably.
Yeah. But for the somatoform disorder, it's you really experience that. You
Pain.
really feel the pain. But it's like you go to the doctors and you basically feel like the doctors are gaslighting you. Like, there's nothing in the air. Are you making this up? But you're like, I really feel this pain.
Yeah.
So that's why it's really an unfortunate condition to be in because you feel like the reality and what you feel inside is like
Not matched.
Not matched at all.
Right, so is this more of a disorder or is it more of a brain neurological thing where your body creates the pain itself?
Well, that's a little bit complicated as well
Yeah.
because a disorder can be because of your brain creating pain, right?
Right.
So I would say that it's both. It is a disorder, and basically everything psychological is biological, right?
Yeah.
It is all created in the brain.
Yeah.
So it is something that is caused by the brain, and if you're experiencing pain, it's usually because there are certain nerves that become more sensitive. So let's say if I touch myself now, it's like, oh, it's fine. But for someone who has somatoform disorder, they might feel like, oh, that
It's
hurts.
painful.
That really hurts,
Really?
yeah.
Okay, so is this just to put it simply, when you feel a sensation, your body's actually sending a signal to your brain.
Yes.
It's translating that signal, telling you, oh, it's your finger touching you, and it's sending that back, and then
Yeah.
you react accordingly.
Yes.
That's why when you touch something hot, it takes about a split second before you actually pull yourself
Yes.
away. So what's happening here? Are the signals getting crossed? What is happening in somatoform?
Well, there is actually a lot of things not known yet about somatoform, but what we do know is that anxiety plays a big role here.
Yeah.
So that's why, actually, even the treatment until now, you can't really say that, okay, I'll cure your somatoform disorder, you can't. But what they do is they focus on how you cope with the physical symptoms, not try to eliminate the symptoms.
Right.
So it would be like, okay, when I touch you like this, it hurts so much, right? But how can you still function even though it hurts? So it's more like managing your daily life so that you can still go to work, you can still go to school, even though you have become a lot more sensitive to physical symptoms that
Right.
not always can be medically explained.
So what are the therapies that are used in that sort of ways to manage your daily life?
Yeah, so the golden rule, the golden way is actually using CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, because then they can see all your irrational beliefs about your sickness. So it's like, okay, I might die if somebody touches me. This is actually quite serious.
Wouldn't that be under OCD though? Because I think there's a lot of people with OCD that think if I don't do this repetitively, something's gonna happen.
Yeah. It is like there are a few similarities. I guess if you went into OCD and then specifically the health related ones, it could be quite similar.
Right.
But people who have somatoform don't always have excessive behaviors, and it's not always like, they don't always have to do it repeatedly.
Right.
But it's just their thoughts, they're always worried, and there's no really compulsive behavior.
Okay, can this happen to anyone? Because you said one of the underlying reasons for this is anxiety. We mentioned stress. All of us experience anxiety and stress to a certain
Yes.
degree. In the people that you have spoken to in regards to this and your observations, what are some of the common factors that you found that people that experience somatoform disorder, what sort of stress do they have that's different from everyone else? Because obviously this is not just an isolated thing, right? It's not a hereditary disease or anything.
So usually they do have a predisposition, as in they usually have personalities that are, I would say they have a high like paranoid
State
Sense.
already.
characteristic, and then also avoidant.
What is that?
Avoidant personality is when basically you think that the solution to any problem is avoiding it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not like when we want to avoid things, we're like, oh yeah, I'll just avoid it. But this is actually like every day
Like
to
a
every
subconscious
single
thing.
problem,
Yeah.
they just want to avoid it.
Okay.
And those two are actually the dominant personality disorders that are related to somatoform disorder. But other than that, there can be like a big stressor in your life, like maybe suddenly you lose your job, you know, something big like that. That could also trigger you to suddenly have a somatoform disorder.
That's very interesting. But with that sort of big event that's happening in your life, what is the difference between somatoform and somatic disorder? Everything is like very jumbled altogether.
Okay, so I think psychosomatic is more common. We hear it more often. It's like, oh, let's say you have a stomachache. Oh, maybe that's just psychosomatic. You know, people like
It's
to
just
say
in your
that.
head, essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
But no, but the thing is, actually, it doesn't mean that it's just in your head.
Right.
When they say you have you're psychosomatic, you actually have like a stomach ache, or you know, maybe you have fatigue, and you go to the doctor, and the doctor says that, oh, this is because you're stressed out. So it's something psychological causing the physical pain.
Right.
But it actually is causing
It
the physical
actually
pain.
is, but when it's somatoform, you feel it, but there is
not
nothing
there.
there. Yeah.
Very interesting. So then, when I guess the confusing part of this is one of the things you would handle through someone like
Yes.
yourself, a psychologist. The other thing would be going to a doctor. I guess that's where the lines get blurred, because when you feel a pain or you feel an illness or any sort of chest pain would be very concerning to me.
Yeah.
I would go to a doctor.
Yes.
What are the steps someone should take where they should actually decide, oh, wait, perhaps I should approach this from a more psychological perspective? When they go to a doctor, because even going to the doctor itself, it could be various things. It could be you're actually feeling the pain or you're not feeling the pain.
Yes.
So what's for lack of a better word, troubleshooting process? What would the process or the checklist be like when you experience it?
So the number one is to, basically if you're feeling any symptoms, especially if it's like shortness of breath, go to the ER first.
Okay.
Right.
So get all of your medical, get a medical checkup first, basically.
Okay, that's number one,
That's
always.
number one.
Okay.
So is it actually something physical or not? And then if they can't figure it out, that's still a little bit confusing, because it might also be like the doctor doesn't know what
need to
you're
get a second
experiencing.
opinion, don't you?
You need to get a second opinion.
Right.
And then if the doctor still says, yeah, I agree with the previous doctor,
Okay.
then you can go to a psychologist.
Okay.
This can get a little bit tricky, because the people who are experiencing this have anxiety, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes the second opinion becomes a third opinion, fourth opinion, fifth opinion, sixth opinion.
And there's
then you're
nothing
doctor
conclusive.
shopping, basically.
Yeah, you want to wait for the answer that you're expecting, right?
Exactly. And that actually increases the probability that you might get a false positive.
Miss the diagnosis. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's right.
So it's like self-fulfilling, you know what I mean?
Right.
So that's where we kind of need to be, like if we see a relative maybe experiencing that, maybe we can say that, you know, you want to go to a psychologist, you know, maybe you are really experiencing these physical things, but maybe mentally there's something, you know,
Also
causing,
blocking.
like that. And you have to be very careful because they also, of course, want to be validated because they really feel that pain inside of them.
So, a quick follow-up. If somebody comes to see you and they said, you know, I went to the doctor already, got a couple of opinions, they said that I'm not feeling anything. How do you differentiate someone that is actually feeling pain through a psychological disorder?
Because you can't feel their pain.
Because you cannot feel their pain. Or somebody that thinks they're feeling the pain.
Well, usually we look at the impact. So it's like, is it really that, because the people who have this disorder, it's like they can't go to work. They can't go to school.
Okay, it's very debilitating.
It's very debilitating. So that's usually quite, I mean, I don't think someone would be pretending to do this unless there is like, you know, another hypothesis going around, right?
Deadline at work,
That's usually what we see, and we really don't focus on the symptoms, but really on how to manage it.
Okay.
So if they keep coming back to me,
Yeah.
it's like, what's wrong? Is it because you're not able to manage the symptoms, or the symptoms are always there? Because my hypothesis would be that the symptoms will always be there.
Right.
But you're just going to get better at
That makes
handling
sense, because no matter what it is, then we'll just teach them to manage it.
Yeah.
And you say CBT is the best way for you to
Yes.
see these patients out.
And also you can get medication like antidepressants,
Right.
anxiety,
Right.
SSRIs that will help.
Exactly. I mean, the first point that you made earlier was, for example, the chest pain. You immediately have to go to the ER. But I think a lot of people don't know that you can get chest pains from a panic disorder.
Yes.
And you don't know how to differentiate between having a heart attack or having a panic attack. How serious is it for someone to notice what it is that is going on inside their body to know exactly what to tell the doctors?
To be honest, that is quite difficult, especially if you're panicking. Like, you can't even think straight, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't put that responsibility on the person experiencing it. It would just be like, go to an ER, and hopefully the doctors there understand that what this person could be experiencing is something mental, it's something psychological.
Right. But you feel it.
Yeah,
physically
yeah,
as well.
because a lot of my patients who have panic disorders, they've been to the ER like 10 times in their lives. I mean, they've been hospitalized. They've gone through a lot of things. So it'd be nice if actually the doctors and the medical system here could, you know, be faster in referring this to a psychologist.
Of course.
Psychologist.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit in regards to treatment.
Yeah.
In the cases that you've come across, obviously stress management would be one of the treatments. So what is that usually like? What does somebody have to go through when they're going through stress management?
Well, the stress management here is focused especially on the physical symptoms they're experiencing, right? So there are actually two techniques when you're facing physical symptoms like this, especially pain. The first one is mindfulness. So you actually go into the pain. This actually might sound counterintuitive, but let's say you're feeling a stomach ache right now.
Yeah.
And instead of, you know, doing everything you can to not think about the stomach ache, you actually just
Embrace it.
embrace it.
Ouch.
And once you embrace it, it's actually the intensity. Let's say it's at a 7. And once you say, okay, I have a stomach ache, I'm feeling it, and then it suddenly can go down to 5 or 4. Because pain is one thing, but suffering is another.
And stressing about both
Yeah.
of them is something else.
So pain is like, it's objectively, there's pain there, right?
Yeah.
But suffering sometimes happens because of our anxiety. Like, oh my God, I'm having a stomach ache. This is going to be so bad. I'm not going to be able to work. And that makes the intensity go from 5 to 7, right? But once you get rid of that suffering, those thoughts, it goes down to 5.
I think I know what you mean. Not to be condescending, but I do this when I'm eating overly spicy food. Yeah, when you like panic about it, it's just going to get worse. It's not going to get better anyway. So I tend to I'll just sit here and I'll just feel the
Enjoy the
spiciness,
pain.
and then that actually goes away a lot quicker.
Oh.
It's actually a little trick that I use.
That's interesting. Well, I'll use it again when I have to go to eat Padangese food or something like
And
that.
the second thing is actually distracting yourself. So distracting yourself is an effective way. You can do that, but it doesn't always work. So it's like usually balancing out those two, when to be mindful and when to distract yourself.
What would be like an example of how to distract yourself away from stressful activities?
I have an example. Say we're in Jakarta. I mean, we are in Jakarta. And we get stuck in a lot of traffic where we can't go outside the car in the middle of the road and everything is blocked and jam-packed and you have a stomach ache. How do you deal with yourself in that moment and you're driving your car and you're having all these things going on inside your body?
Well, the number one thing, if we're talking about pain, you can actually use, you know, like those hot packs. Those actually distract you from the pain, right?
True.
Or it's like this isn't a good example, but like when you are feeling like pain somewhere and then you
pinch
yourself,
yourself.
Like in a
yeah.
wrist?
I've done
Hey,
that.
that's actually
Oh,
distracting
yes, I've done
yourself.
that
Yeah.
You're right. Okay.
That's actually distracting yourself. So there are certain techniques, and if you do the therapy, there are like long list of things that you can do
Sure, okay.
because you will get bored of them after a
Okay.
few times.
Right.
Well, let's, we have a follow-up question. in
Yeah,
regards to this. Go
I
ahead.
do have an interesting question. Do kids experience
Yeah.
the sort of symptoms? And you know, talking to an adult is very different from talking to a kid
Yes.
who's like 3 or 4 that doesn't know what's going on with their body.
They're not able to describe.
Yeah,
things
they're
as
not
well
able to
as
describe what they're feeling as well. How are you able to find that sort of thing within a child?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on the age of the child because when you're 3 or 4, you can't really experience anxiety to that level.
Degree, yeah.
Yeah.
good.
So if it's at that age, yes, they can, but it wouldn't be that intense. But if let's say they're already a teenager, I would say that if you are the parents here, be very careful so that you still validate them, whatever they are feeling.
Yeah.
But it's like validate them, but don't let them go doctor shopping. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like to a certain extent, you really have to understand what is actually objectively happening, what is actually the pain, and which one is the suffering. You know, you kind of have to do that
Differentiate both.
while being very careful. So make sure you don't invalidate them.
Okay.
It
So,
is tricky.
Is this an ongoing thing? If somebody who's experienced this before, can this kind of reoccur from time to time? Is this something you need to always
Yeah,
manage throughout your life?
unfortunately, it usually happens for a very long time. Like the average is like 5 years.
Wow.
So you experience these symptoms for 5 years,
Is
and
it the
then
same symptom, or do they get other sort of sickness that they feel?
it's usually the same symptom. But there can always be like if there's an added stressor in your life, you know, something else might happen. But it's for 5 years, and throughout the 5 years, if you do go to therapy, you are able to manage the symptoms. So people who come from, you know, they're at bed rest because they can't go to work, they can't do anything until, you know, they can go around, they can work a little bit. It's usually like that.
So you have to integrate slowly back to
Yes.
society with that. Well, that sounds interesting. But so essentially, with that 5-year period, is there a cure after that?
I wouldn't be like optimistic enough to say there is a cure.
I mean, you said it was still a very recent
it's
study,
just more
right?
you are able to manage the symptoms.
Right.
It could be with medication and therapy.
There you go. All right. So you or someone you know is experiencing any
Yes.
sort of pain and not getting any sort of medical diagnoses from it, then perhaps you should go see a psychologist.
Yeah, and unfortunately here it's like, okay, you go to a doctor, it doesn't work, and then you don't think about going to a
Of
psychologist.
course. It's
Yeah.
not
You
really,
go
It's all
thinking
physical stuff,
to
yeah,
like
Chris.
some spiritual thing.
That's true.
And then traditional
Yeah,
thing,
it's
and then
true.
it's like you've spent already like 3 years doing all this, and then you think, oh, maybe
And a
it's
lot of money
psychological.
too.
Yeah.
a lot of us don't make that link as well.
Yeah.
And it's the journey of going through so many like
Trials and errors.
yeah, that's also quite, you know, hard on your
It's training. Indeed. Well, that's why we have you on the program to introduce us to things like
And
this.
educate all of
Something new to
us. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Matiara. It's always good to have you on
Thank
the
you so
program.
much.
Sharing with us. We hope you found out and learned more and throughout our insightful discussion in regards to somatoform disorder. We're going to take a short break here on the program, but when we return, we're at the halfway point of our show, so we've got some world updates just for you. That's coming up next. Stay tuned.